Dear fish hobbyist, today finally I have a case for you on a koi carp. I don't have that often cold water fish, but sometimes I got fancy goldfish, lionheads, this time a koi carp, like I had in my previous presentation, some goldfish. And koi carps in this case was presented by someone who had a large supply and had serious problems. So for me, it was interesting to dive into it and to see what we can find out, what was going on. So I will share you my presentation, which I prepared for you. And it koi with large wounds. That's how the fish looked like as it was presented to me. Look at that. Look at this koi, the big wounds, like a big ulcer, large wound, like making holes in the fish. Look at the holes in here at this fish. Look at the bleeding parts in this platinum koi. Look at the wounds on the nose, on the head, on the belly. All different wounds in different locations of that fish. And of course, during the fish that were supplied with samples to a laboratory to do a microbiological testing, to make microbiological culturing for checking what bacteria could be on there. And at the same time, we did sensitivity testing in the lab. We asked to check what antibiotics would respond on this bacteria that could be found during the culturing. And that's something had to be done by specialized labs. And certainly in your area, there are specialized labs, or you can ask your veterinarian who can help you, because that can really determine what is causing the wound. In most cases, those wounds are caused by bacteria. And instead of playing around with antibiotics or any other product, send it to the laboratory and make a good diagnosis for the particular case. In this case, it can be different from another batch from another country, like say from Japan or Israel or Sri Lanka or Europe, can have different bacteria and different problems. So a laboratory will help you. In this case, we didn't do any microscopic work, so we evaluated the problem from distance. So we checked on the system, which we got a material supply to check on it. It looked all clean, the tanks looked clean, the filters looked large enough and perfect. So all looked okay in the first instance when we received it. But what we noticed on a certain moment when we received like the big filter, the cleaning filters here, we saw there was only a small amount of UV light, UV tubes, to disinfect this whole system. And this was, of course, lacking and making a risk that the bacteria could be spreading easily from one batch sitting in this first tank. It could easily infect the other koi in the other fish tanks, because the UV was not capable enough of destroying all the bacteria, pathogenic bacteria, passing through the tube. So that's something you have to check for your UV system, that you can do a test, a bacterial test, before the tube and after the tube, and see to compare how small is the amount of bacteria coming out at the end of the tube. Something you have to check, because this is a potential risk when you have a holding facility like this with a centralized filter system. And when we received the results from the laboratory, so it was taken from the kidneys, from the organs, particularly the kidneys is a very good part to do the microbiology. And they found the Iromonas hydrophila. And Iromonas hydrophila was typically found in the culture. And this is a bacteria that causes furunculosis. Furunculosis is a well-known cold water fish disease, koi disease. And at the same time, we did culturing. Go back. We did culturing for the sensitivity testing, and we found that like chloramphenicol was sensitive. That means that we could take actions to treat with chloramphenicol in this case, or with sulfatriptoprin, or with ceftazine. But in this case, we recommended to go ahead with chloramphenicol. That was a suggestion because chloramphenicol was easily available through the veterinarian. So that culturing, that of bacteria, and that sensitivity testing really helped us to see what we can put into the water and into the fish food. So what was the suggestion for the treatment? Well, first of all, to improve the UV sterilization system, because that was lacking and creating a potential risk for the whole system. And the disease, of course, looks like furunculosis. That's what we determined with the Iromonas we found. And we could apply an antibiotic chloramphenicol in the water and in the food. I supply those details in my the new illustrated guide of fish diseases. And we make some recommendations how to use chloramphenicol. If you have any questions, you ask my Patreon follower, you can ask me. I can give you the details if you write me a short message. And it at least also to recommend feeding the fish during minimum 10 days afterwards with professional treat or Fruco. You could combine that even with the chloramphenicol, put the food inside that food. So, and our professional treat and Fruco also helps during this process. So feeding the fish with a diet where chloramphenicol is mixed into it. And I can give you recommendations if you write me a small message how to use. So this is a case, an interesting case on the koi carp with the nice background of the Amazon here. The water is perfect. I hope the water of the fish is also perfect. So keep in mind, good water, good filtration might have prevented that Iromonas outbreak for one or few fish, for one tank could spread to the whole system. So think about it. Thank you for watching. Have good luck.